I want to thank Ben and choir and TK for this arrangement that brings together, that connects the blessing, Salam Alaikum, peace be with you, with that promise that we shall overcome. See, I need to hear that right now. I'm feeling a little like that righteous anger is getting the best of me. I'm not just mad these days or disappointed. I am seething. I am boiling. I'm alone in this. And let me be clear, I don't have anything against righteous anger. We need it. We need it especially if it moves us to act. But I will remind you of those wise words of Sister Joan Chittister from last Sunday. Action alone is always dangerous. Remember? Action alone is always dangerous without taking time to dip into that well of the soul before simply dashing headlong out into the world. We can make things worse. So Ben and the choir help us remember this morning that what will overcome the fear and the power of privilege and the naked disregard for justice in this moment is the way we choose to bless each other and the world with some other kind of power. Now you notice in the text this morning that Jesus is experiencing some righteous anger. The text says that he is indignant with his own disciples about the way they are treating children. They are using their privilege to ignore and leave out families and the children that are coming to be blessed by him. Now, perhaps you can't blame them. They've been left out of the power system, and now they're exercising the little bit of power that they have to exclude the ones who have even less power than they have. Does this sound familiar to any of you? You know, the boss yells at the parent yells at the child yells at the dog. There's a cascading domino effect. And we're not immune to that in this beloved community of ours. We're not immune to that. So the inclusive Bible says that Jesus scolded them, which is fascinating because I usually think of scolding as something that adults do to children. It's an angry reprimand about something that perhaps they had been told in the past and should remember in the future. The scoldings I received as a child usually began with, "Didn't I tell you not to do that?" Right? "Didn't you know better?" Perhaps by scolding the disciples, Jesus is reminding them that they're children too. And the way they're behaving is like children needing to be brought up short to remember what really matters. Now, odd as it sounds, that's actually good news for them. Because Jesus says, unless someone welcomes the reign of God as a little child, that person will never enter it. By getting the disciples to feel like the children they are leaving out, they get a sense of what the family of God is really asking of them. So this is one of those unexpected contrast stories in the teachings of Jesus where the grown-ups get scolded and the children get blessed. And not just blessed. Jesus raises them up as the left-out ones who are at the center of God's blessing on earth. And so it was that we were not leaving out children this morning. We were lifting them up to lead us in something that's at the very center of our life together, this table. Now, I do know something about being scolded, and if you want more juicy details of my being scolded as a child, you are in luck. Because my sister is here today. My sister Frances is visiting from Illinois with her wife Heidi, And there are stories to tell, and I am sure she would be happy to tell them. Now, my sister and I were raised in what I call the left behind culture. It wasn't just a religious understanding about what was yet to come. It was a whole set of values about right now. Unlike Ben's reminder this morning, the left behind culture taught us that the only way ultimate good would ever overcome is through war. And not just any war. The war that would end all wars, that would take place in the Middle East and would bring in the final rule of Christ. The war through which true believers would inherit the blessing of the world. And here's the bonus. I feel like those commercials. Wait, there's more. Here's the bonus. If you believe right now, you would never have to face that war because Jesus would come get you and rapture you out of the world before the big war takes place. You just had to believe really, truly, with all your heart, without any doubts, and you would disappear and escape to heaven. So Francis and I can tell you stories, right, Francis? Can tell you stories about the fear of being left behind. I came home one day from school, and all the shoes were lined up by the door. We had this tradition at our house that when you came in, you took off your shoes, so you could sort of take attendance about who was at home by whose shoes were there. And all the shoes were there. And there was something cooking on the stove. And the washing machine was running in the basement. And I said, "Hello? Hello?" Nobody was home. I had been left behind. And I was in total panic mode. I started thinking about who I could call. There was Mrs. Lee, but the jury was still out on her. And there were the Bronsons. That's it, the Bronsons. They were loving and faithful and caring people. Surely they would not have been left behind. And so with shaking hands, I dialed the phone number for the Bronsons. And it rang. And it rang. And it rang. And just before I was about to completely melt down, Mr. Bronson answered the phone. "Hi," I said, "you're still here." "Yes, I'm here. Can I help you?" And then what was I supposed to say? "Gee, Mr. Bronson, I have bad news for you. We're the only two left." So I did what good little Christians do. I lied. I said, "Mr. Bronson, the washing machine is making some strange noises, and my parents aren't home, so I wondered if you could tell me what to do." "Turn it off," he said. "Thank you. I am so glad you are here." And I was. Over the years, I wondered what the appeal is for this left-behind culture. Who wants to live in that kind of fear? At the American Baptist Seminary of the West, Dr. Leanne Snow Flesher, a friend of mine, a Hebrew Bible professor, wrote a book in 2006 that offers two main reasons why it is that this way of looking at the world seems to work for some people. The first reason is that the world is changing so much that some folks already feel like they're left behind. The culture has moved on without them, and they are looking for a simpler world with a less complicated faith. And this understanding of the Bible provides them with two things. One, a common enemy, and a claim to some inside information. The enemy, she says, is anyone who exhibits behavior they deem to be anti-family, pro-feminist, pro-homosexual, and I'll add that they're also vehemently pro-Israel. Ironically, even though they believe the Jews are going to hell. Dismissive of or outright antagonistic to any attempt to protect the environment. Why? It's going to go away anyway. And anti-anyone who imagines a more global picture of the world. War is good because it just brings us that much closer to the final days. Now, the inside information they have is their exclusive insight about the teachings of the Bible and the timeline of the end of the world, and therefore they, and they alone, will be saved. Now, I know sometimes we talk about us and them, so I just want to be clear. When I say them, I don't mean people I have read about. These were my people. This is the left-behind culture my sister and I grew up in. And for lots of reasons, probably obvious reasons, I have left that culture behind. However, while that biblical understanding may not be true, the feeling is real. The feeling is still real. I still know the panic and the fear and the anger of being left behind. Maybe you know it too. With all the money that's being generated in this economy, we know, right? We know what it is to be left behind. You read the most recent statistics of the concentration of wealth in our country? It's astonishing. With all the advances we thought we had been making for women and people of color, it's pretty clear right now just how far behind we are. And then there's technology. Oh my. How long is it before I can't figure out how to use my phone? Or my computer, or my television? As it is now, there's times when I have to say, Patrick, I know that this button is supposed to turn on the television, but it doesn't do it. How long before it just doesn't work? Most of the time, I'm being dead serious here, most of the time, I'm feeling the fear and the panic of being left behind, of being irrelevant and becoming disconnected and lost. If there is a generational issue right now, I think it's partly this. I talk with those of you who feel like you are in this phase of life where the death of family members and friends makes you feel increasingly left behind. And with the story we've been given today, is there any more poignant experience of being left behind than the children and parents who are being separated at our borders? Where are you, Hank? Hank McGee? Yeah, there you are. Hank sent me an article this week from the New York Times about 13,000 children. That is not an exaggeration. 13,000 children now being held in immigration detention centers. You see that photo on the cover of your bulletin this morning? Take it out and look at it for a minute. 13,000 children. That includes the children who were separated from their parents at the border and those who crossed the border on their own, unaccompanied minors, we call them. According to the article, it isn't that the number of children has grown, it's that the folks who usually step up to take care of those children are often themselves undocumented. And the rhetoric of this government makes them reluctant to come forward, and they have good reason to worry. Matthew Elbins, a senior official with the Immigration and Customs Enforcement, testified before Congress that his agency has arrested dozens of people who applied to sponsor unaccompanied minors. The agency later confirmed that 70% of those that they arrested did not have prior criminal records. Do you know what it takes to be a criminal in the United States? Be here without the right papers. Get a traffic stop and you have a criminal record. In other words, the government, think of this, my friends, the government is using these children as part of its plan to flush out, arrest, and deport as many people as possible. Now, if it sounds a little scoldy this morning, it's because I have to believe that at least some of the people who are doing the arresting would identify as Christians, who must know this story about Jesus being indignant with his own disciples for trying to separate parents and children, trying to keep them from running into the arms that would welcome and embrace and bless them. But maybe that's the problem. Maybe Jesus has been left behind. Now, I realize this morning that for all that righteous anger, that scolding will only get us so far. The truth is, real people, young and old, are being left behind. And I don't know what to do, or how to change it, or when this country might right itself. All I know is that when I felt that terror and that panic of being left behind, I called Mr. Bronson. And I know how it felt when I heard his voice and what it meant to me to hear him say, "I'm here. I'm here." Maybe in all the ways we feel left behind this morning, the best we can do for each other and the world is not to harbor some fantasy of escape or to surrender our hope, but to find ways to keep saying, "I'm here. I'm here. I'm still here." We are the people of love and justice, and we will not disappear. You can say amen to that, right? We're not going to disappear. I was thinking this week, given the nature of the service, about the words that we use to dedicate and bless children in this community. And I think it was in November of a year ago or so that we dedicated Ella. I'm looking at her mom sitting in the back. Ella Gudlati Jindal. We affirm that they are made in the image of God and are children of God. We promise to love them, respect them, challenge and include them in our life together. We commit ourselves to tell them the stories of our ancestors about Abraham and Sarah, who received an unlikely promise to bless the world. About Moses and Miriam, who led our people out of slavery. About Ruth and Naomi, an immigrant whose faithful love created the promise of a new family. About Mary and Joseph, whose openness to mystery brought Jesus into the world as refugees. About Jesus, who was anointed by the Spirit to bring good news to the poor. About all the world's prophets and people who stand for love and justice. And then we offer our hope that these stories will teach them the unique way that they can serve the world and that God will keep them wherever they go. And we sing those words that Rod Romney wrote for us in that dedication hymn. May your life, a holy treasure, offer love in fullest measure. Neither life nor death can sever you from God's own hand forever. We promise them, in other words, that no matter where they go, even in those moments when they feel like they are left behind, there is a voice that keeps saying, "I'm here. I'm here. I'm still here." And maybe, like our children, you need to hear that voice again today. You need to hear it. You need that hope, that assurance, that promise that your life has something to offer the world and that you are not alone. I'm here. We're here. Grace is here. And so today, if you hear that voice, do not harden